about you, sir? Do you think the colored students will show up?
If I got anything to do with it, they won't show up. Well, I think it's a breaking point of the school integration. I just don't feel that they have a right to go to school.
Segregation, the separation or isolation of race, class, or ethnic group by enforced or voluntary residence in a restricted area, by barriers to social intercourse, by separate educational facilities, or by other discriminatory means. Segregation began in the early 1800s in the South. Blacks were sold as slaves and treated as if they were objects. Even after slavery was ended in 1865 after the Civil War, African Americans still struggled due to lack of education. It was difficult for them to get jobs and provide for their families. Although the new laws prohibited racial segregation, the white people still held on to segregation and blacks were still treated unfairly. By 1957, African Americans had been fighting for rights for almost 90 years. Even after slavery ended, they were forced to use separate bathrooms, drinking fountains, theaters, and schools. Progress was slowly being made with the integration of buses and waiting rooms. Schooling was still unfair for blacks. They weren't always offered the best education, and they were given hand-me-down school supplies whites no longer needed. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court's Brown versus the Board of Education officially declared that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, and all U.S. public schools were instructed to integrate with all deliberate speed. Arkansas was one of the two southern states to announce it would be immediately taking steps to go forth with a new ruling. The superintendent of Little Rock, Arkansas, was Virgil Blossom. He had a three-step plan to make sure integration would go as slowly as possible. First, he would integrate grades 10 through 12, next, grades 7 through 9, and finally, grades 1 through 6. The three-step plan for slow integration triggered the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, to enroll as many black students into previously all-white Central High School as they could. The decision of the three-step plan to integrate schools infuriated the NAACP's president, Daisy Bates. With the help of the NAACP, Daisy Bates hand-selected 32 volunteers who were leaders in their own schools. This was based on attendance, grades, and if the students could handle going to a school where they would constantly be harassed. The list eventually was reduced to 9 strong-willed students.
We were Terrence Roberts, Jefferson Thomas, Thelma Mothershed, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Carlotta Walls, Melba Patillo, Minnie Jean Brown, and Gloria Ray.
The first African American students to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas were known as the Little Rock Nine. On September 2nd, the night before school began, Governor Orville Faubus instructed the National Guard to surround Central High School and block the black students from entering. He said this was to preserve the peace.
I have therefore, in accordance with the solemn responsibilities and the oath of my office, taken the following action. Units of the National Guard have been and are now being mobilized with the mission to maintain or restore the peace and good order of this community. Advanced units are already on duty on the grounds of Central High School.
Eight of the 9 students arrived together on the first day of school, driven by Daisy Bates. Elizabeth Eckford's family did not own a telephone, Therefore, she was unaware of the carpool plans and arrived to school alone. The Arkansas National Guard prevented Elizabeth Eckford and the rest of the Little Rock Nine from entering school that day. Because the students were unable to attend school, they met at Daisy Bates' home every night to do schoolwork. At this point, it would have been easy to quit and go back to their old schools, but the Little Rock Nine decided quitting wasn't an option. During the next few weeks, Judge Richard Davies began legal proceedings against Governor Faubus. President Dwight D. Eisenhower saw what was going on in Little Rock, Arkansas, and tried to persuade Faubus to remove the National Guard and let the students enter Central High School.
Such an extreme situation has been created in Little Rock. This challenge must be met, and with such measures as will preserve to the people as a whole their lawfully protected rights in a climate permitting their free and fair exercise. In the present case, the troops are there pursuant to law solely for the purpose of preventing interference with the orders of the court.
Judge Davies ordered the National Guard to be removed while the Little Rock Police Department took over to maintain peace. The police escorted the Little Rock Nine into school through a mob of 1,000 angry citizens against integration. Later that day, the students were removed due to safety issues. President Eisenhower sent 1,200 members of the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and placed them in charge of 10,000 National Guardsmen who were on duty. Finally, on September 25th, the Little Rock Nine attended their first full day of class. Throughout the year, the students experienced routine harassment and at times it led to violence. Melba Patillo remembers being kicked, beaten, and having acid thrown in her face. The students weren't allowed to participate in extracurricular activities. Some parents were fired from their jobs just because they sent their children to Central High School. On May 25, 1958, Ernest Green, the only senior from the Little Rock Nine, received his diploma and became the first African American to graduate from Central High School. The Little Rock Nine taught America a hard lesson that year. They pushed through barriers and suffered greatly to get the educational system they had always deserved. They saw that they were treated unfairly, and they knew it would be extremely difficult for not only them, but for their families as well. They proceeded with the integration of Central High School that year because they wanted a change. Not only did the 9 high school students from Little Rock, Arkansas change the way they were viewed in an educational sense, but because of their persistence and strength, they helped change the way society looks at African Americans.